Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken.
Hey, Kiernan.
Hello, Ryan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
102. I mean, it's not as exciting as 100. Yeah. I feel
it's going to be a long time before we have like a number that's cool.
I mean, what's your next exciting? 200, I guess, maybe 250.
I think at this point it's like 1,000 or bust.
I listen. Okay, well, it's bust then. Particularly because, Ryan, I do think we have to address the elephant in the room. There's actually two elephants in this particular room with us today. The first is that at the conclusion of the last episode, which was, of course, a deep dive into the travels of Frederick Law Olmsted, the preeminent American landscape architect.
Already a beloved episode, by the way.
Already a hit. Yeah, it was riding the coattails of 100, of course, when we welcomed Rick Steves to the stage. But we said that this would be that follow-up episode on Olmsted and our experiences of places you can actually see Olmsted's work. We've decided we want to delay that, and that's because we each have a couple travels coming up where we're going to be able to actually experience the Olmsted landscape soon, and we want to be refreshed and ready to talk about it.
Exactly. So we're going to pause that the follow-up episode, but I promise you more Olmsted coming up in the near future here.
So that's elephant one. Elephant two is I am ashamed to say that again,
all the Olmsted fans just clicking delete. Right, I can hear them now just clicking like, whoops.
What would Olmsted fans call themselves? Olmstans?
They're Olmstans.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good.
The Olmstans out there.
Well, Ryan, of course, the second elephant in the room with us today is we've again missed our promise of a cadence of every other week. The truth is, folks, the pandemic made a travel podcast hard, and now we're in the summer. So we're going to do our best to come out with an episode every other week. Off air, we have a lot of conversations, me and Ryan, where I tell Ryan that he's got to buckle down and stop being lazy. Ryan, is that fair?
I think it's somewhat fair.
Ryan's trying to dial us back to one a year.
No, I think it should be like the 7 Up documentary series. Just check back in on us every 7 years.
Yeah. And that's why I'm putting the shingle out for a new co-host, and Ryan's going to be demoted to co-host. Now, Ryan, but we do have it. While we're not going to dive into our Olmsted series today, we are going to be talking about a very fun topic.
Yeah, I think the one that everyone can participate in.
And this was your topic, because you really are more passionate about film than I am.
Film, yeah. There are very few films on this list, I think. But I think that I do. We both love movies. In fact, we've gone to many a film together. We've
gone to many, but I will say that I have much more appetite for media that's an hour or less. I do love going to the movies, but it's you've seen many more movies than I have.
Yeah, well, I feel like
I watch Star Wars like on repeat.
That's horrifying. And also your media diet is like Bob the Builder and Blue's Clues.
Charlie, the only thing Charlie's ever watched on TV is there's two things: Sesame Street and there's supercuts on YouTube of dump trucks because all kids love trash trucks and dump trucks. And so there's like 2-hour cuts of just different garbage trucks pulling up to houses and picking up garbage cans and filling and then driving off.
I might watch that. That sounds
I'll tell you what, Ryan, I'll drop it in the show notes. Finally give Charlie a reason.
And that's on YouTube. So all the commercials are like, conspiracy theories or trying to get you to join a cult.
Absolutely. So Ryan, so you suggested that we talk about trip movies, travel movies.
Yeah, movies that feed the spirit of wanderlust.
Exactly, and I think this is a great suggestion because it really it speaks to the spirit of things reopening. I believe you've actually been to a movie theater, right?
I've been to the movies now like an embarrassing amount of times in the last couple of weeks. Yeah,
and it'll be even more embarrassing when you get the Delta variant.
Yes, that's true.
So it's in the spirit of reopening and going out and seeing movies in a group, and also travel, slightly opening up a little bit. And so I think that what we're going to each do is we're each going to give our 3 picks for top trip movies, top travel movie. Is it travel movies or trip movies you want to do?
I think it's travel movies.
I agree with that. Yeah. So we're each going to give our 3 picks for our favorite travel movies.
Right. And you know, we don't have any duplicates on this, but I think that you have some excellent, there's some overlap here.
Are you suggesting that you've looked at my list? I thought that this was going to be a little bit of a reveal.
Well, I thought it was too, but then you put it in inside the script. And so,
all right.
Yeah.
You're lifting up the curtain a little too much. I think, a quick plug to ask people to please rate and review us. That really helps the podcast. Go to iTunes or wherever you listen. Give us 5 stars. Write who your favorite host is. Maybe call out an episode that you love. And then, Ryan, I say that we take off to talk about our favorite travel movies.
All right. It's time to take off.
Tell the cabin crew.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
All right, Ryan, we're here in the air.
We are flying. And you know what's good to what? You know what I like to do on a long trip? Not on a short trip, but on a long trip. I like to watch a movie when I'm flying.
So I like to watch movies when I'm flying. I also, unlike most passengers who are regular flyers, I do like to watch the safety videos. And this comes from the fact that you and I both have day jobs in communications. And I'm always fascinated to see how the airlines keep the safety video fresh and interesting.
And some do a better job than others.
I mean, this is kind of a lame way to start talking about travel movies, but Ryan, this is definitely fodder for a full other episode. The safety video is on, maybe we could talk to a creator, a scripter of a safety video. I have a favorite. I'm wondering, do you have a favorite?
Well, I'm super like brand loyal. So I kind of like tracked the Delta videos over the years, but I don't know that I have.
What are the notable differences?
I mean, mostly in the beginning, they were always like the CEO, like standing in the plane and talking to you about like Delta's commitment to safety. And then over the years now, it's definitely a more bottom up approach. You're getting like to hear from the flight attendants and a man dressed as a captain. I hope it's not actually a captain. Giving you the videos.
No, I think that part of the video is live. I think they're doing it live. They're shooting it live in the cockpit.
It's because it's a funny bit.
And so it sounds like you're a Delta loyalist. I will say that there's a safety video that sticks in my mind. I will put it in the show notes. It was from, I remember it. I saw it many times this year. Air France, and it was it was launched in 2015. This video, and it was like, they leaned into the Frenchness of the video. Is obviously done in French with English subtitles, but like they cast extremely stereotypical French people and they dressed them in these like striped monochromatic sweaters with sort of a slim red skirt. And it was very funny. And they had kind of ridiculous oversized props. And I have to say, I enjoyed it every time. I found it very charming. I felt like I wanted to know these characters. That's a high bar to pass for an airline safety video.
Nothing would be more annoying though on an airline than oversized props. If you had like huge forks and stuff, I mean, it would just be like, it's barely enough room for the mini stuff they're giving you.
All right. So we've covered the safety video. Now, Ryan, I just want to start with the question of when you came up with the idea of let's list our favorite travel movies, we didn't exactly go through the criteria. So I just wanted to ask you, in your personal definition of what you're going to recommend here and what I'm going to recommend, we each chose 3. Are you thinking of travel movies as these are movies that spotlight a particular location? So, I remember when I went to Rome for the first time, I watched the classic Roman holiday before I went so that I could recognize a bunch of stuff from the film. Or are you thinking of travel films as a film where the main narrative is about a trip?
It's a film it's a film that sort of recalls like what traveling is and all that's good and bad about traveling, right? Like so it can be it's definitely a trip.
Either of those from
exactly.
You're not about drawing lines as much as I am.
Well, especially now when it comes to film, which is a subjective experience.
Sure. So you're painting with a broad brush here. In a way, you're reflecting the spirit of the podcast. Where for instance, you could travel broadly.
A travel film could take place where the person's trying to get to a destination, it could also just be them at their destination entirely, right? So it doesn't have to include the actual, flight. I mean,
Sure.
there are a million flights on Seinfeld. I've just rewatching Seinfeld, during quarantine.
Sure.
And they're always on a plane, but you would never call Seinfeld a travel sitcom. It's not.
Is it true? That's not. They're on planes a lot.
Yeah, they're on planes a lot. There's quite a few plane scenes because they go to Europe a couple times, and they never actually show much of the trips. Jerry goes on the road a bit.
I know they go to a wedding in India.
Yeah, they have to, and so there's stuff like that, but it's almost always just on the plane. They never actually do, they never actually get there. You never actually see anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But,
all right. I feel like I get your idea of what a travel movie is. And do you seek out movies when you know you're going someplace to try to get to know it before you go?
Yeah, I mean, that I try to read a novel that is like, a contemporary novel from that country.
I think the way you phrased it was exactly perfect. You're always trying to read something. You're never actually reading. You're always carrying it under your arm. You're displaying it on the subway.
When I'm traveling, I even have more time to read. That's one of the better things. But yeah, I definitely do try to watch movies. Although typically, when I come back from a place, that's when I'll be like, oh my gosh, I want to watch all these.
I like that idea. It's a way to bring you back and celebrate the trip you took.
Exactly.
All right. So Ryan, how do you want to do this? You want to run down your three, then I'll do mine, or do you want to do back and forth?
Let's toss back and forth.
I love it. So why don't you kick us off? Yeah.
So, I've done an episode on the Grand Tour, which we can link to in the show notes, which was this amazing time when rich Europeans just got to sort of travel Europe and hang out when they were young adults and, experience all the culture and food, etc., the high society. I think a film that is really fun that takes place sort of near the end of all that is called The Talented Mr. Ripley. Have you ever seen this film, Kiernan?
I have. Yes, I have.
Yeah, so The Talented Mr. Ripley is about a rich kid from New York named who's played by Jude Law, and he has gone off on his grand tour of Italy with the beautiful Gwyneth Paltrow, and doesn't want to come back. Which who can blame him? It seems like quite a life, and so his father sends Matt Damon to Europe to effectively bring Jude Law back, and a lot of really creepy, interesting things sort of happen while Matt Damon is out there trying to get Jude Law.
Now, Ryan, you felt when we discussed the Grand Tour originally that you would be able to fill this role that was traditional on the Grand Tour, where a wealthy young man would bring along somebody called the Bear Leader, who would lead the young man around and, would set up a campsite for him and sort of be his masculine guide through the continent.
Exactly. And I think one of the troubles with Jude Law's character in The Talented Mr. Ripley is he doesn't have a bear leader.
Oh,
right. There's this character played by the late great Philip Seymour Hoffman who is a bit older and wiser than Jude Law is, but he doesn't have somebody there who's sort of helping guide him. And so Italy in the 1950s was a dangerous place, and it seems that Jude might have benefited from a good bear leader.
I mean, it begs the question, Ryan. Were you there? Would you have been willing to be Jude Law's bear leader?
I probably would have gone off with Matt Damon.
All right.
Frankly,
it's good to know. It's actually pretty fascinating to me. Knowing your type, I would have guessed you were more of a Jude Law man.
Matt Damon is sort of right there. He's right there.
But Jude Law's so slim.
So is Matt Damon. Go watch The Talented Mr. Ripley. We've gotten old.
He's young. That's true. Yeah. All right. Fair enough. We've been old. All right. Well, Ryan, my first pick is a movie called The Trip. Are you familiar with that?
So I'm familiar with this pairing of these two. I believe they did a TV series together that was somewhat similar.
That's exactly correct. Okay,
yeah, but I have not seen The Trip.
So The Trip is a British movie, and it's pairing two British comedians. One who's quite famous, Steve Coogan. He played Alan Partridge, so a lot of people know him from that work, which is very popular in England, less popular in the United States. But like
all the Steve Coogan stands are like, yeah.
Comedy nerds know him, and I found him to be very memorable in a one-time part he had on Curb Your Enthusiasm, where he played one of Larry David's psychiatrists and was very, very funny in that. And then another British comedian named Rob Brydon. who is also extremely talented and funny. And the whole idea, so you mentioned the series. The series was then developed into the movie. And they then did 2 follow-up films as well. And the premise is extremely loose. You're really watching for these the personalities of the comedians, because all they do is just meander around the British countryside, stopping at swanky, fancy restaurants, having great meals, and joking with each other. And they talk a lot about comedy. They very famously have a competition of who does a better Michael Caine, which is very instructive to listen to. And it has, so here's how I would describe it for people who don't know it. If you know Mike Birbiglia's podcast, Working It Out, that's 2 comedians who are talking to each other about their material, and they're working out material. Rob and Steve do a little bit of that, where they're talking about kind of the art of comedy. But then they also get into a like deeper, darker narrative, sort of like where Anthony Bourdain used to take a lot of his.
And this is not scripted.
Shows. No, it's not scripted. Yeah. It's very much in the reality TV.
It's a documentary.
It is a documentary, but also I should say the reason I like it and that it makes my top 3 is that if you're a person who loves England, you get wonderful shots of the British countryside, and it transports you back there. It fully feels like a very British movie, and obviously I am a bit of an Anglophile and have a weak spot for it, so it brings me back. And it is great plane viewing because you can kind of dip in and out. There are 2 follow-ups. One is called The Trip to Italy, and the next one is The Trip to Greece. So obviously the format worked, and you get to follow these friends in real life. But they're not like best of friends. Like in a way, they're competitive comedians, and it just really gets into their relationship and the darker side of their lives, and you get some lovely imagery. So while my recommendation is for The Trip, I've seen The Trip to Italy and The Trip to Greece as well. And if you like the first one, you'll like the next 2.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I will most definitely, because I enjoyed the series. So it seems like I'm the perfect audience for.
Absolutely. You should definitely, you might not need to see the first one if you've seen the series, but definitely hop to the second.
Yeah, we'll do. So the second film that I'm going to talk about is called Before Sunrise, and it's part of a trilogy, the Before trilogy. And Kiernan, have you seen any of these?
I have not seen any of them, but I read a lot of film criticism about the trilogy, and I remember when this film came out.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting film because it basically, there's 2 people in it.
That is interesting.
Yeah, Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, and they spend the whole film takes place over an evening, basically overnight. These 2 folks are young travelers. They meet in Vienna on like the train, and they sort of have a long meandering date, and they talk about their lives, what they want to accomplish, where they see themselves going, their hopes and their dreams. They basically have this sort of like incredible first date. And then which has to end before sunrise when he's got to get on a train and go somewhere else. So it's a really interesting film because you get to see so much of Vienna.
Have you been to Vienna?
I have been to Vienna, yeah.
You have? Okay.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I was curious as to whether you were picking a travel movie that brought you to a place that you had an experience. I have not been to Vienna, so this might be exactly what I need.
Well, I've also fallen in love many a night when I was in my 20s traveling Europe. So that's sort of what this reminds me of more than that. But what's interesting?
Were you just ringing a bell going, bear leader, bear leader?
But what's really interesting about this is that it's a trilogy. So they actually shot the second film 9 years later, and it takes place in Paris with the same 2 characters. They haven't seen each other in 9 years. Follows them to Paris. So this is set in Paris during a trip, and then the third one is filmed 9 years later. This is basically a 30-year film project, and that takes place in Greece. So all 3 of these films, the first one, being about these 2 just meeting, later on when they kind of re-meet, and then, later on in their relationship, are all sort of great travel movies, but also just kind of great movies set in these beautiful places. And Richard Linklater, who directed these movies, films all these places beautifully. So it's just a great way to be immersed in the in the place.
So you mentioned that 7 series, but this actually follows the same of what you would like the podcast to become, where, we once every 10 years we get together, maybe in a European capital, and we record for 45 minutes.
I think they're 90 minutes. I would give you a full 90 if it was every decade.
All right. Well, Ryan, my second pick, I already know you're going to be a fan of, because I know you like Wes Anderson as much as I do. And speaking of, you've just recently done an episode with the creators of Accidentally Wes Anderson.
Exactly. Yeah, we had Wally on the pod to talk just about Wes's style, which I think you're going to talk about in this movie.
Absolutely. You should go back and listen to that. One of the great interviews we've had. We can link to it in the show notes as well. And a major part of the Accidentally Wes Anderson brand is telling the stories behind buildings, and also embracing the colorful, quirky aesthetic that we associate with Wes Anderson movies. And the Grand Budapest Hotel really jumped out to me because, I mean, it's right there in the title. The focus is on this beautiful hotel. And it has the sense of humor that you associate with Wes Anderson. Maybe it's a little more upbeat than, if you're only a Royal Tenenbaums fan. That can go to darker places than the Grand Budapest Hotel does. But this actually is, I think, unique among the movies we're recommending, because it takes place in a fictional country called Zabrowski. And it's the story of Monsieur.
Wait, it doesn't take place in Hungary?
No, that's what's so weird about calling it the Grand Budapest Hotel. No, it's a fictional country, but it very much has the feel of an Eastern European alpine resort. Yeah,
Budapest isn't like that at all, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'd like to dig up the story of why they gave it the name Budapest as opposed to just some silly name. And Ralph Fiennes stars, and he is the very proud, very prim and proper, and extremely devoted concierge at this famous mountainside hotel. And his name is Gustav H. And it is about his many adventures serving the guests, one of whom is extremely memorable, a aged through makeup Tilda Swinton, who he goes to the full extreme to serve.
The thing about Tilda Swinton, it's not even worth putting like the unrecognizable Tilda Swinton, because has she ever done a film with just like Tilda, like Tilda at lunch? No.
Right.
It's always like she's playing Bob Dylan, but after he's been dead for 47 years. That's like a typical Tilda Swinton role.
Right. And you have the backdrop of a fascist regime rising, which makes it sound much more serious than it is. It's quite a silly, campy arch movie. And I was disappointed in preparing for the podcast to realize that the exterior of the hotel that we see is actually a model. That is not a real hotel. And it was not actually shot in a hotel, but it is so evocative of a certain type of rundown, but still extremely charming, grand old hotel that it makes it one of my top travel movies, because there's nothing I love more than a hotel with a story.
Yeah, and the hotel that I stay at in Mexico City, that reminds me so much of this hotel, because it's like from the 1930s, and it has that vibe. So I wish there was somebody, if there was like a Disney World for adults, so they should make the Grand Budapest Hotel that you can stay at overnight. I'd go.
Wes Anderson would hate that idea.
No, he wouldn't sell out like that.
And
Wes.
You would know, you've met him.
That's true. That's true.
If people want that story, they got to go listen to the interview about Accidentally Wes Anderson.
Yeah. You can hear my story of meeting Wes out on the town in Brooklyn.
All right, Ryan, number 3.
So my third film, I was slightly hesitant to put on, but it's an incredible movie, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. It's Midnight in Paris, with Owen Wilson and Rachel McAdams. Have you seen this film?
This is a Woody Allen movie, no?
This is a Woody Allen movie.
Yes, I have seen this, yes.
Yeah. So what I think is so fantastic about this movie is there are so many times that you travel and you're walking in downtowns of Europe or in South America, and you're just hearing stories of the people who live there, the artists and the politicians and the history that happened, and it's like, it's amazing to be there, and you just imagine, wow, I wish I could have been, I wish I could have experienced this. And what's amazing about Midnight in Paris is it's just basically, Owen Wilson's character gets to experience that exact thing. So basically, Owen Wilson's character is, walking in Paris in the middle of the night. I think he's had a fight with his fiance, and all of a sudden he is transported back into 1920s Paris, and he's hanging out with Cole Porter and the Fitzgeralds and Ernest Hemingway, and it's just like an amazing.
Pretentious.
It's super pretentious, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's part of your brand.
It's part of my brand. I don't know that I would.
It made your list.
I'm not picking these folks as people that I necessarily want to hang out with, but I'm just saying that isn't that a magical idea that the city that you're in, you're hearing about all that history, all of a sudden you are immersed in it, and he's kind of experiencing these people as like the sloppy humans that they were, not the mythology or the image they're presented. So I think it's a really fun movie. I watched it somewhat recently again, and it definitely holds up. And it's Paris is magical even if you don't fall into a time warp. But I think it's something that knock on wood, I'm happy to experience.
I really like the music in this movie as well. I remember being I thought it is not dissimilar to the Air France safety video I was talking about, where it really does, it transports you to Paris in many different ways. They thought about every aspect of the film.
Well, Woody Allen doesn't make films anymore. He can only do, plane safety videos. So,
well, I mean, he's been canceled, and I'm shocked and ashamed that you've included one of his films on the list. And I love that you're denying pretension when your three choices were The Talented Mr. Ripley, Before Sunrise, and Midnight in Paris. Come on, man.
Well, you know what? Your third choice would have been on my list, but you had taken it already.
Is that true? This was going to be on your list?
100%.
That totally makes sense, but it fits with me because if anyone knows anything about me, I'm salt of the earth. And this is a real, straight old school comedy, feel good. It is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, starring the great Steve Martin and the sadly deceased before his time, epically wonderful John Candy.
And I just watched this over quarantine because
really?
Yeah, Eugene hadn't seen it, and we've been watching like old comedies, and let me tell you, it really holds up. There are so many laughs in this movie. And even though sort of like we travel so differently now, there are still so many things that are the same, that haven't changed at all, which is striking.
I have to say that to me, I think that this film may embody the relationship that you and I bring to the podcast, because
it's a bit of an odd couple relationship.
A bit of an odd couple, and Steve Martin is a high-strung marketing executive,
right? And the other guy, John Candy, is
he sells shower rings.
Shower rings, yeah.
He's kind of a bit of a snake oil salesman.
Yeah, but when he's out there in the real world, he's more useful. He can get the free food out of the diner. Steve Martin would have just starved if he had been.
So just to give the broad brush description of the plot, it has the rare distinction of being a movie that is centered around Thanksgiving, which you really don't see much of. So it makes great yearly viewing around the Thanksgiving holiday if you're looking for something. And it's about two people struggling to get to Chicago. And the film is the story of the journey because, like happens and feels very familiar to anybody who likes traveling, things just keep going wrong. And sometimes you have trips like this where your flight gets delayed, your car crashes, you finally get on the train that's going to get you where you're going, it breaks down, you have to spend the night, you take a bus, and you just can't figure out how to get where you're going, and you're desperate to get where you're going. And it explores the relationship between this unlikely pair who are trying to go to the same place. And so, keep trying to say goodbye and keep getting stuck back together. And of course, by the end, turn out to have a soft spot for one another. And I just think the frustration and the pain, the crummy motel that you end up staying in because you have to wait till the next morning to get on your next transportation. These are some of the most familiar struggles for travelers. It brings me back to a trip I took in Colorado where I missed a connecting flight and had to drive 8 hours, and I was going to do it through the night, and I ended up taking a hotel because family members were not feeling okay, that I was just going to give up sleep. And anyway, just the stress of travel is not often brought. It's not represented in any of these other films, and I feel like this captures it perfectly.
Yeah. And have you ever had made a temporary trip friend? Like somebody who you've been...
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's the best.
Yeah. I've never gotten so far as to stay in a hotel room with them, but I've had dinner with many trip friends,
Yes, I've had dinner with trip friends, and I do recall I befriended somebody on a flight, and then we made the major commitment of going from LaGuardia into Manhattan on the subway together, which meant an optional additional hour and a half spent chatting.
I mean, I wouldn't even do that if you and I were on a trip. I'd be like, I cannot wait to get in this cab.
And I remember what was so striking about it was that she was traveling from Brazil to the United States, and her name was Jackie Brazil. And that's true.
Amazing.
What a small world.
Yeah, well, that'll be in your future travel memoir.
So as somebody who has recently watched the movie, Ryan, not to put you on the spot, but is there a favorite moment or line that you just love from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles?
I think my favorite scenes are when they get pulled over. They get pulled over by the police officer after the car's been on fire.
Oh, absolutely.
And that back and forth is just hilarious.
I'm
truly hilarious.
I'm surprised that you're not calling out when they had to share a bed in a motel.
Well, that part hasn't aged as well.
It's feeling a little.
It's a little bit like, oh wait, are we supposed to be laughing at
right? Because they end up spooning.
Yeah,
and of course the famous line is, "Yeah, those aren't pillows.
Those aren't pillows."
If you don't get it, folks, give it a watch. So, Ryan, why don't we quickly recap our top movies? Do you want to give your three?
Totally. The Talented Mr. Ripley, the Before Sunrise trilogy.
Oh, my God, you're expanding it to the full trilogy.
Midnight in Paris.
And mine were The Trip, Grand Budapest Hotel, and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
And real quickly, Kiernan, I had actually debated putting the Darjeeling Unlimited on my list.
Yes, I actually originally had it on my list, and then thinking through the Wes Anderson catalog, I decided Grand Budapest Hotel is a more favorite for me.
And Even Life Aquatic is a travel movie.
That's interesting. Well, argue that point.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, it involves people who've never been going on this adventure on this boat. There are outsiders there. And anytime you have outsiders in like a normal travel environment, that's someone else's like job. That's a travel movie. They're experiencing like a real adventure.
All right. Okay. All right.
But I think, Kiernan, the flight's ending. So it's time to put up our tray tables and head to the last stop.
The last stop?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
So, Kiernan, what is the last stop?
So, Ryan, this is the last segment of the show, the final segment of the show. It's why we call it the last stop. And it's where you and I each bring one thing. And usually I like to be more specific than just referring to something as a thing. But in this case, thing really is the most accurate because it could be anything. It could be a piece of gear. It could be something we cooked. It could be a restaurant that we went out to. It could be a book we're reading. It could be, in this case, it really shouldn't be a movie we've watched since we've already covered that. Or maybe it's a day trip. Anything that has fed the spirit of wanderlust within us even during the workaday week. And again, to get back to the apology, in this case, it's the workaday 3 week. So, Ryan, I'm hoping that you have a real humdinger of a last stop.
So I've become, I'm not doing a movie. I'm doing a TV series that is airing right now. So it's topical, folks. We are 2 weeks in when this comes out. We are 3 weeks into this amazing new series from Mike White on HBO. It's called The White Lotus. Have you seen this yet, Kiernan?
The White Lotus? No, I have not.
So Mike White did one of my favorite TV series, Enlightened. If folks haven't seen that, it's one of the best TV series ever to tackle social media activism as one of its main plot points with Laura Dern. It is really, really funny. He is back with this new absurd series that takes place at a resort in Hawaii called The White Lotus. And it takes place over 6 episodes, and each episode is about a day in the life of both these guests who are just arriving and these folks who are at the resort who might have spent too much of their lives there. So it is it's social satire, it's a comedy, it's romance. It is really funny. And I've never been to Hawaii, and I don't think if I did, I would stay at one of these resorts. But it's really painting an interesting picture of what that's like and the kind of folks who go to them.
All right, that sounds pretty good. I think I'll add it to my queue.
Yeah. What are you? What's got you traveling? What's got on your traveling mind?
Just going back to our classic last stop catchphrase. What's got you on your traveling mind?
That sounds like a country song. Yeah.
Well, if we ever swap out this seat taken, Ryan, I'm going to keep it light this week, and I'm going to go with an Instagram account that I recommend. And this is the rare case of a very, very traditional TV show doing an excellent job of adapting to the social media age.
Whoa! And this is coming from a social media professional. So
absolutely. I think I'm talking to a social media professional. Everything I know, I've learned from observing you. Which is mostly that you pay bots to build your following. But Ryan, I'm curious. Now you and I have become extremely fond over the past couple of years with a certain Connor Knighton.
Oh, I love Connor. Yeah.
And we both know Connor is a correspondent for CBS Sunday Morning. And I'm not extremely familiar with CBS Sunday Morning. I know its reputation. I catch some of its more famous clips on YouTube or things that are surfacing. But I noticed that folks were starting to share with me a lot of content from at CBS Sunday Morning. I'm curious, Ryan, have you by chance ever looked at this account?
I have not. I mean, I think Connor's personal Instagram account is a blast, though. So,
all right. Okay. All right. You always, I got a real feeling that you would throw me out the window here if Connor Knighton came in the door. All right. Connor, this seat is already taken. Okay. But, Connor actually was featured just this week on the at CBS Sunday Morning stories. So you may catch sight of Connor. But one thing that the show is known for is that it brings a lot of stories about nature and it has like moments of just quietly taking in natural landscapes. And so you will find the feed is filled with these wonderful nature stories, including just the most recent post as of our recording. It's just a 2-minute video to look at Tahoe National Forest in the northwest of California. And these are sort of moments of respite in a much too busy social media life. Whenever I come on to the CBS Sunday Morning post, I know that I'm going to have maybe it's going to be a moment of quiet, or it's going to be a moment of sort of quirky silliness in the way that Connor Knighton often brings to the broadcast. Damn it, I ended up complimenting him again.
Well, I will give that a follow because I know you have pretty good taste in Instagram accounts.
Absolutely. Now, Ryan, I'm curious, what are we talking about next week?
So, one of the things that I got to love over quarantine is the Appalachian Trail. You ever hiked any of that, Kiernan?
Yeah, I've hiked bits and pieces of it. Just I will say it wasn't that I set out to do the Appalachian Trail. It was because I was doing longer hikes that just happened to not longer than the Appalachian Trail. I was doing hikes that happened to be a piece of that much longer trail.
Well, the Appalachian Trail turns 100 this year. And, I think it's quite time for us to sort of delve into the Appalachian Trail, how it happened, and, how folks can go and walk some of it.
Yeah, we're going to do a celebration of 100 years of the Appalachian Trail. I can't, we have not sung from the rooftops. We don't have an Appalachian Trail episode, so this is exciting.
Yeah, this is very exciting. So we are going to be all Appalachian Trail next.
Strap on our hiking boots.
2,192 miles. We are going to make it all the way.
And we're gonna be singing show tunes the whole way.
Well, now no one's gonna tune in. Promise no show tunes, and until then,
I never make that promise.
Until then, I'm Ryan Davis,
and I'm Kiernan Schmidt,
and this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken.
So you didn't do any of the European vacations or any of those? Were those on your list?
Oh, the National Lampoons. No, those didn't make the list. The one I was trying to decide whether Home Alone could qualify.
Oof. Home Alone, if it was just from the parents' perspective, is a travel movie.
That's exactly right. If it was like vaguely
the worst travel movie of all time.
Yeah, exactly. And also would have featured John Candy.